Hi everyone, it's Zara Altair with Actation Now, and this is the Midweek Zap. And so happy you're all joining us today. And today I'm so excited we have Dustin Stout with us, and we're going to be all about visuals today. Well, except for a little bit at the end, we're going to shift. But Dustin, I'm so happy to have you with us here today. And you want to tell us a little bit about yourself, especially for folks who don't know who you are?
Yeah. Well, first of all, happy to be here. Happy to finally be in a hangout. I don't think we've ever been in a hangout before today, Zara.
No, we have not. This is our
Yeah,
first.
it's first time. So
Yeah.
very exciting. Glad to be here. I'm a digital guy. I do branding, social media, consulting, web design. I'm actually the CMO for an amazing digital marketing firm called Wheel Media. And we do all things under the digital sun, pretty much. Search engine optimization, pay-per-click advertising, web design, marketing, social media, you name it. We are awesome at it, or at least we try to be. I run a little blog called Dustin.tv. It's been my baby for the last, 4 years now. And that's where I kind of cut my teeth on social media and marketing and content marketing, and it's been an awesome journey so far, and I've learned through teaching, and they say that's the best way to learn. Is if you really want to learn something, teach it. And so that's kind of the approach I've taken, and here I am today, the red shirt, the red V-neck shirt guy.
Yes, I know. I love having that, personalized logo. That's part of the whole thing, and
It's all part of branding.
it
All
is
part of the
part of
branding.
branding. So I just wanted to get in touch with the audience and let them know about the backdrop is gone. I had a conversation with Karen Chin yesterday, and she was like, "Oh, I just love it. You're so personal when you're in your own room." Um, and she said it several times, so I thought, what better day to change the visuals on the Midweek Zap than the day we're talking about visuals. And Dustin, you want to add to backdrop versus setting?
Yeah, and it's actually a conversation that I've been having with a lot of HOA hosts or people who are interested in starting their own Hangouts on Air, or starting anything that is a video production of some sort. I come from the television film industry. I'm an actor first and foremost. I love performing. I love the art of telling a story on the screen. So video is part of what my first love was. I love social media. I love branding and creating beautiful web experiences for people. But first and foremost, I love film and storytelling. So a lot of my training and a lot of my how I operate and how I see the world is done through that lens of a filmmaker and through a storyteller. And so when I consult people, one of the most popular things to do, one of the easiest things to do for a Hangout on Air, because you want it to be presentable, you want it to be branded well, is to do the backdrop. A flat backdrop that has some of your branding on it, or maybe it's just a cover to clear out, to cover up all the background that you don't want people seeing. You've got socks drying on a line, or you're hanging your laundry in the background. And that's fine. But what I've found is that the emotional response to that format, to me, it kind of feels a bit constricted. To me, it feels like the host is up against the wall and the screen is this far away, so it kind of feels like they're trapped. And visuals are all about emotional connections and creating an emotional experience. It's all part of the environment and the atmosphere of what you're trying to present. And when you told me the reaction that your friend had, I forget her name.
Karen.
Karen. That she just lit up when you got rid of the backdrop. It made absolute sense to me because when somebody sees depth, when somebody can look into my home or into a studio and see depth, then it totally opens you up. It opens up the energy. There's no there's no claustrophobic feeling of, oh my gosh, are they trapped between a wall and a screen? I think just having that depth in the background, even if it's not interesting, even if you don't have cool social media paintings in the background that your wife made. Yeah, I mean, even yours, Cheryl, it's very quaint. It sets the atmosphere for the conversation that's about to happen, and I think it's very important, to take some time. And if you if you do have your socks hanging in the background, and a background that may not help or assist in the visual quality of your show, then sure, the backdrop's a quick and easy fix. But if at all possible, I think visually, that environment of depth really helps the emotional and presentation of the show.
Thanks. And I'm just going to add this quickly. I was hesitant to have that all open like that because I have two kitties, and one of them leaps about a lot, and he leaps up on the top of the couch, and he's actually been known to photobomb an HOA. So, well, I'll just reduce the kitty effect, but I think I agree with you. It is much more comfortable. And here's Karen. Hold on a second here. And Karen is saying, hello everyone, love your environment, Zero Altair. And I do live in what I call the cottage by the creek, so it is pretty quaint.
And William Rock, he poses the question, and this is a challenge that I think a lot of Hangout on-air producers have, is what if they are in a cube? What if they are in a space that where really they are up against the wall? And there's nothing wrong with that. You work with what you can. Not all of us have a studio. Not all of us have an environment conducive to a background that has depth, and that's fine. Some people, I know a few people who were working in an office space that had windows. I mean, they were literally up against windows, and the sun was coming in so brightly that there's no way they could ever do a Hangout on Air without a backdrop, because they have to cover up the windows. Otherwise, they'd just be a shadow in the Hangout. So you work with what you can. Yeah, you do the best with what you can, and don't let anything stop you. But if at all possible, try and take some consideration into adding depth and openness to the environment.
I think, William, the second part of his question, especially if you are a brand, and I think that's something that concerns a lot of people, that their branding is, oh my gosh, is my house my brand?
Yeah. Well, I'll give you an example. So I've been studying a lot of video content producers, and obviously from the film and television industry, I study a lot of those guys too. But let's take Gary Vaynerchuk, a guy that we all know. We've all probably seen his Ask Gary V show. He has a highly active background. I mean, people are working in the background, walking back and forth. He's got people walking by throwing stuff on his desk. That can actually be a really interesting background. Now he has a really good camera to where, like yours is blurred out in the background, so it's not super sharp. It kind of draws our focus to you. So he can kind of do that. But there's other shows like The Verge. The Verge is a great website, that does news, and when they do their little 90 seconds on The Verge, they do little story summaries. They usually do the video. Last I watched them, with they're in front of a set of windows, or they're in a enclosed room, but the wall is glass, and you can see people working and moving in the background. Or even Twit, This Week in Tech, a great show on YouTube. Mike Elgin is part of it. They have a background that's got lots of depth, and sometimes it has activity in the background, people walking back and forth. And I think this adds to the energy. This gives a powerful energy to the show. And if you're a brand, you have to understand that it's not about plastering your logo everywhere. That could be actually a negative effect in many ways, but it's about creating an energy, creating an environment that's exciting.
Yes, and then Ross Betts. Hi, Ross. Thanks for visiting. Has a question. She says, "Is being outside in a garden environment too distracting?"
Not at all. No, I think that's a great thing. In fact, I have a balcony out here that I was considering doing hangouts on air from, because it's, I've got a tree and there's birds singing, and it can be a really cool thing. I was on a hangout on air once with Craig Fifield of Circuloscope, and he was out in his he was like on his deck.
On his deck. His deck is part of Craig.
Yeah.
And you know Craig, you know his deck.
Yeah, I mean, it was very cool. You can totally just grab a really great environment effect from that, and as long as it's not the sunlight. You always have to consider the lighting. The lighting is very important. How you look on screen, because you're the most important thing. Just like a website, the content is the most important thing. You are the content for the show, so you should look the best. You shouldn't be washed out. Lighting. And sometimes being outside, the sun can make you very white. For instance, if I had light pouring in here right now, I'd look like Casper the Ghost. So always take that into consideration.
Wow, this has been a really interesting discussion.
William asked another question about one of my favorite topics to talk about: green screen and animated backdrops.
Let me bring that up for a second. William says, what about green screen and backgrounds like Ammon Johns uses? He uses XSplit and
yeah, those can be really, really cool if done well. I mean, it all goes back to the environment you're trying to create. What emotional connection are you trying to make with your audience, and who is your audience, and what do they like? If you're trying to be CNN from 1990, then those crazy animated high-tech backgrounds work. If your audience is into that kind of thing. If your audience is 20-somethings, young professionals, they might think it's a bit cheesy. So it always goes back to your audience. Provide an environment, create an environment that speaks to your audience. And I'm no set designer. I'm not an interior designer, but I know audience, and I know I know presentation from a visual aspect, and I think everybody has to do their homework when it comes to what message are you conveying with your visual setup.
Cool. So let's kind of switch gears a little, Dustin, and talk about that same kind of presentation and what you want to convey to your audience, but from a visual setting, say in posts and on social media and on blogs. What do you think is the most important element for a visual that you choose for that kind of static post?
Well, the most important element is always the message. So, it's one thing to look pretty. It's another thing to be an effective communication tool. First and foremost, every visual that I ever create starts with, what's the message that I'm trying to communicate? An easy place to start is blog graphics. So every blog post that I create has its own headline graphic, and it either contains the headline or the core principle that I'm trying to communicate. But everything starts with, what is that message, and how can I communicate it in a visual way effectively? And unfortunately, like a lot of the inexperienced graphic designers out there, they just want to make things pretty. They want things to look good, and the communication aspect sort of falls, second place to how cool can I make it look, or how creative can I get with it. And as much as I advocate for creativity, and that we're all creative, and that we should be as creative as we can be, at the end of the day, if our creativity trumps our communication, then we've failed miserably.
Oh, I so totally agree with that point, and I'm glad you said that, because I think it's because I've seen some really beautiful visuals, but then they have nothing to do with the content of of the post, and I'm like, and I find it actually confusing
Yeah.
because I know on on the promos that I did for the show, I had some, scientific article references to visuals and how they attract, and also how they help people remember. People remember visual cues much more strongly and longer than they do words.
Yeah.
So I really agree that the tie-in of your visual with the content of the written words that you're doing is much, 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 much more effective. It's
Yeah.
like double whammy. It's a two-punch,
And I always tell people, some people have even commented in the past saying, your graphics all seem kind of similar. Like, do you ever want to like mix it up a little bit? And usually I say, no. The visuals I create are effective, really effective, because people get the message. Now I could sit there in Photoshop. I can go into Illustrator, create this beautiful piece of typography. I can bring it into Cinema 4D and create a 3D objects. I can create words out of buildings, and I can throw it on an image of New York, and I can create the message out of buildings if I wanted to. I have the ability to do that. I've been using Photoshop for 15 years now. I could create things that are super creative, and people would go, oh my gosh, that's so cool. I want to put that as a poster on my wall. But guess what? It would take them 5 minutes to find the message, to read the message, and by that time they're so distracted by the visual they don't want to read the actual post. So again, it goes back to what's the message and what's the purpose, and always make communicating your message of highest priority.
Right, and then Molly Youngblood Geiger says, great content sharing strategy is storytelling. We are all hardwired to hear a good story.
Absolutely right.
And that just goes along with, making sure that your visual and your written word content match.
Absolutely.
And then we have Lee Rickler. Hi, whoops, wrong one. What happened? Sorry, guys. I've lost it. It went away. Lee Rickler had a comical comment. He says, sometimes gold is just a color. And we're getting some positive.
He said, if silence is golden, why doesn't everyone just shut up and become millionaires?
We're talking today, Lee. And then do you have some just, practical, actionable tips for people about choosing their visuals and color, design, any of the, any practical tips for people who aren't used to picking images, and what are some important things they need to do?
Yeah, well, the first is image selection. So one of the popular formats for visual content today is a photo background with text on top. It's the easiest and most efficient way to create a visual. So, first and foremost is finding the right image, and you need to have in your back pocket a set of resources where you can go find free images, not images that you found on Google and haven't checked on the copyright, which is a big issue that I have. Just because it's on the internet, people, doesn't mean you can use it however you like. Artists have rights. Copyright is an issue, and I actually wrote a full-on article with resources and links to other people's articles about the fact that you should share images responsibly, because sharing an image that is copyrighted or that doesn't have the permission to be used in the way that you used it can get you blacklisted. It can get you kicked out of social networks. You can have your account removed. If you go over Google Terms of Service, they're very strict on copyright issues. But I've actually come up with 17 websites that I use on a regular basis that have free images to use and share however you like. Some of them have different legal use cases, but
they have different. Some of them have different levels. That is a great resource. So if you could post the link after the show in the comment stream, that would be really terrific.
Yeah, so
Terrific.
it's just dustin.tv /find-free-images. Find free images.
Thank you so much. And
Very easy.
I'm being an artist, and I know there's some artists here with us today. That permission usage is. Thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah.
It is so very, very important. And if you do go to Google Images, make sure that you filter by use. You can some images have, you can use it for anything. Some images you can use if they're modified, and some images you need the special permissions. And if you just play with that, you'll see that a different set of images is going to come up in your search. So just be sure that you have the legal permissions to use that. And just as an aside, if you find photos and you want to share them and they're up on Google Plus, for example, please give the photographer credit. Just, hat tip.
That's just being a good internet citizen. Always give credit is due.
Yeah.
So practical tip number 1, have some resources where you can get those free images to use. Again, I list 17 sites. I really, at this point, the first 3 or 4 websites I list there are sufficient enough for me. But once you have those resources, the places you can go find images, then starts the real work of figuring out what's your core message. What message are you going to communicate with this visual, and what sort of image would communicate that message? So if it's a message about clinical depression, let's say, great topic, something that needs to be talked about more. Depression is a real thing. You wouldn't want this. You would want the image to convey in some way that theme. So you wouldn't pick a photo of a happy couple galloping, skipping on the beach in bright sunshine. You want the image to sort of link or relate in some way to the core theme of what you're trying to communicate. Colors play a lot into emotions, and I've written about that before. There's plenty of articles out there about color theory and how images or colors are tied to emotions. But instinctually, a lot of people know. If you just spend some time thinking about, what emotion does this color kind of feel? Blue obviously is associated with being sad. I'm feeling blue today. Yellow is the color of happiness. That's why smiley faces are yellow. So warm colors tend to be happier. Cold colors tend to be a little less happy. But when used properly, they can really mean anything. So just understand the meaning that you're trying to get across and find the right image for that. Sometimes you can't. We could spend hours looking for the perfect image. But I would say set a time limit for yourself. That's what I do for myself. So know your message, set a time limit to find the right photo. I give myself 5 minutes. If I can't find it in 5 minutes, I find a generic landscape background or something that I can kind of blur out. Because at the end of the day, it's not about the image, it's about the message. So
right, and then also when you're searching for images for a post and content like on your blog, if you don't find the image that actually totally connects with that one main point, usually you can find an image that works, that ties in with a subpoint. And so I just, there's, you still don't have to go totally off track
right,
for your content.
Yeah, as long as it makes some sort of sense, and like I said, if you cannot find anything that relates to your content, a great landscape that's blurred out, or a great abstract piece that's blurred out can work really well. Next tip I have, there's certain principles of design that designers and artists sort of instinctually know. Things like balance, symmetry, asymmetry, framing, spacing, white space. We kind of know these things instinctually, and I wrote a blog post that was meant to be so simple that even the most non-designer could design beautiful graphics. And I cover the 3 most important design principles, which to me are balance, having a sort of visual balance of the image, so it's not like a bunch of things on one side and nothing on the other side, making it feel a bit lopsided. Balancing out elements. It talks about framing, making sure that your words aren't pressed up to the edge of the screen, making the reader feel claustrophobic. And it also talks about contrast, which contrast is probably one of the most difficult things to explain. Contrast essentially has to do with how easy it is to differentiate the subject from the background. So if you have a black background and a dark gray text, the contrast is very low. It's difficult to read. But if you have a black background and white text, that's the best contrast you can possibly get. It's very easy to read because the colors are they're so on opposite ends of the spectrum. So that's contrast. I can put a link to that post in there as well. It's dustin.tv/visual-content-design.
We have some follow-up comments I just want to bring up for a second here. Sean is here again, and Sean, you've got to give me some phonetic sounds for pronouncing your last name. Hi guys, VIP, giving recognition credit to authors of pictures. However, if you can't find the source, still say picture anonymous or can't find or something like that. I think that's a great point. I hadn't thought of that before. Gave it the try. What do you think, Dustin?
My advice, something that I personally do, if I can't find the original source, I don't use it, period. Okay. There's a million that's an understatement. There is multiple trillions of images out there on the internet, and if you find one that you can't find a source, odds are you can find another one that's similar. But if you must, I would at least give the link to where you found it. So you found it on Google search, or you found it on Pinterest or something. At very least, give that link to where you found it.
Yes, because one of the things that happens is that people do take images that are against copyright, and they have violated an intellectual property, and they put it somewhere, and if you try to use that image, you're just following down the trail of violating their intellectual property rights. So I totally agree. If you really can't find the source, don't use it, because it could come back to bite you. And fines and punishments can be extreme when you do that. And then Deborah Rock has a question. She says, if it is about the message, why have an image at all? Why not just plain color?
Well, you can, absolutely, but the thing about imagery, the thing about an actual photograph or graphic image is that our human brains are programmed to look for, for those of us gifted with sight, we're programmed to look for real life things that we can connect to, and we're more emotionally connected to real world elements than we are flat digital elements. A picture of a woman smiling is always going to convert higher on a website than a picture or a background that's just flat black. Studies have proven again and again that when photographs and real-world imagery is used, people have a higher emotional connection, and they connect more quickly emotionally to that than say just flat text and flat color.
Cool, great. That was a great question, Deborah. Thank you for asking that. And Dustin, we're kind of coming up to our last 10 minutes here, and I wondered if you had one last tip, and then we can talk a little bit about your fantastic plugin.
Yeah, so I guess my last tip would be, just understand those basic principles. If I need to drop the link in there, I will. But just go do it. Just go experiment with visuals. I mean, the only way you're going to get better is if you just go do it. Go experiment. Find some tools like Canva is a popular one right now, or even PicMonkey. There's a program called GIMP that's a free software. Tons of iPhone and Android apps. I did 2 different blog posts about tools that are for desktop and for iPhone. There's tons of them out there. Go play with them. Have some fun. Do some visuals, and you'll get better every single time. And I like to tell this story. People think that I was just kind of born being good at graphics, but if you saw some of my early stuff, back in high school, you'd think, ugh, well, you should find stick to acting, buddy, because you need another career. But we all start there. We're not natural-born graphic designers. None of us are. And some of us have, a little more natural gifts than others, but you're never going to get better unless you try. So just try. Create some stuff. Create a quote graphic. I mean, people love those. They eat them up all day on Facebook. Find a great quote. Find a great image that relates. Put the quote on the image. You can use any app in the world for iPhone can do that, in less than 5 minutes. So just go try. Give it a whirl. Experiment. Have some fun. Because at the end of the day, if it's not fun, don't do it.
Oh boy, do I agree with that one. And practicing, and it's like any new thing that you start doing, nothing at the beginning, and you keep practicing, and it gets better. It's like learning to play a musical instrument, or acting for that matter, and or technical skills. I mean, here we are all today on the internet, like interacting and doing things, and a lot of technical skills are involved in just the use of, our technology to bring us here all together. And some of us were early adopters. I know I was online in the 90s, but and it's all new when you're beginning whatever it is you're beginning. So I like that very much. And then we have one question from Midweek, and he asks, are the perceptions of copyright slightly different when used by someone known for graphics and, say, by an engineer like me? Are they applied more strictly when you use them? I'm going to let you answer that first, Dustin.
I'm not sure if I understand the question exactly.
Let me back up. Here we go.
The perception.
I'm not sure either, but my short answer would be perceptions of copyrights it doesn't matter whether you're a graphic designer or an engineer. Copyright rules apply to everyone. That's answer.
I think what I'm hearing, I'm sorry if I'm misinterpreting, but I think what he's asking is, is it worse for someone like me who knows about copyright to violate copyright than for an engineer who doesn't know any better? The analogy that I would use is it more wrong for a police officer to rob a bank than it is for somebody who doesn't know better? I mean, the law is the law. The law doesn't have degrees of, it doesn't have bias towards our presuppositions or our preconceived notions of what's right and wrong. It's pretty cut and dry. You use it this way, you don't use it this way. And if you do use it this way, the way it's not intended, you violated it. And it doesn't matter what your knowledge is. Ignorance has never been an excuse for breaking law. So I would say no, it's not different. Perceptions might be different. The word perception in this question is what's kind of throwing me off. Perceptions might be different. Public perception is, when it comes to image copyright, is completely wrong. The large majority of people have no perception of copyright when it comes to images online. So perception is a funny thing, but the law is the law.
There's a whole conversation going on about watermarks and the like, but think in the interest of time, um, we're not going to bring those up and get into that discussion today, but you're certainly welcome to keep pursuing that in the comment stream, because I do want to give a little bit of time to the social warfare plugin and all of its power. So Dustin, you want to tell us how you all got started with that and what it's doing now for people who have it?
So it really started because I'm a visual snob, and I hated how most social sharing plugins looked on my blog. So I was doing a big redesign, the biggest redesign I've done in a while for Dustin TV back in early 2014, as I do every year at the beginning of the year. And my buddy Nick Cardot, he's a genius when it comes to really digging in and manipulating code and PHP and JavaScript. I admittedly am a novice when it comes to PHP and JavaScript compared to Nick. He's a genius. So I designed what I wanted my social sharing buttons to look like, and I sent the PSD Photoshop version over to Nick, and I said, Nick, how hard would it be to design buttons that looked like this? And he goes, probably not too hard. So he just started working on it. I gave him access to my test site, and he started just playing with it, looking into social APIs, and he just figured it out. And before too long, I started coming up with ideas, and it was either me or him, or maybe Jason. I can't remember. One of us came up with the idea, like, what if we actually made this a WordPress plugin and allowed other people to have the same, beautiful sharing buttons? And that started a whole different conversation. And the ideas just started flying, and we started thinking about all the shortcomings of all the plugins that we've ever used for websites for clients. And one of the core things that I've always wanted a plugin to be able to do is to identify Pinterest-specific images. On Pinterest, we know that a certain style of image, the taller images, always tend to perform better. They look better on Pinterest, and people tend to click through more on those images. So I wanted a way to where I didn't have to put that vertical image on a blog post, because it never looks good on a blog post. You have to put it, next to your content and align it to the right, and then your text looks this big, and people are like reading like this, and then they go to a long line, and it's just not a great experience. So I wanted a way around that, and so we built in this feature to where you can identify inside your WordPress dashboard. You can upload a Pinterest-specific image, so that when somebody hits your Pinterest button, that image is pulled up immediately. It doesn't even have to be shown on the page. It automatically pulls up that Pinterest image, and so that was a big feature that we wanted to include, and we've added a whole slew of features since then. Gosh, I'm just so proud of what Nick has been able to do, and I'm so proud to see. I mean, just seeing people use it and give us such great comments and reviews and help us work out some of the bugs has just been really, really fun and exciting. And we've got some really cool plans for it in the future as well.
That's great, and it all came about with visual sensitivity, I guess.
Well, it came out of a need, right?
Yeah.
Like all great products, it came out of a need. I had this need for myself. I had this itch that I needed to scratch, and then this experience with all these things that I was not getting from any other product out there, and we answered our own problems. We solved our own problems, and we found out really quickly that other people felt those pain points as well, and we were able to save them from them.
That's great. And then we've got some feedback from Peter Hatherley. Fun is such an important element, Dustin.
Oh, yes.
Boy, I think we all agree. We just, fun is just an important element of life, Peter. So, Dustin, I can't believe it. We have come to the end of our time. That was just a super speedy show today. You've just given so much, and thank you for asking all the questions, and thank you, audience, for asking all your questions. There's so many that we didn't even get time to get to, but I know that your questions will get answered after the show. And then next week, we're going to switch to the opposite side. We're going to be talking about words. And Peter Haverly is going to be joining us. So and boy, I'm telling you, he is the word master. So I hope you can all join us next week. Once again, Dustin, thank you so much. So much. That was a power-packed 40 minutes. Thank you so
My
much.
pleasure, Zara.
Okay, ciao, everyone.